It was supposed to be the future of the infantryman, a radical space-age design that promised to break a century of tradition. In the latter half of the 20th century, a wave of innovation swept through the world of small arms. Major military powers, Britain, France, Austria, China, all made a bold bet. They abandoned the conventional rifle layout, moved the action and magazine behind the trigger, and embraced a strange, compact, and futuristic design, the Bullpup. The logic was seductive. The new age of mechanized warfare demanded a shorter weapon for the tight confines of an armored personnel carrier. The Bullpup offered what seemed like a magic trick, the full-length barrel, and thus the full ballistic performance of a long rifle packaged inside the compact body of a submachine gun. You got the range and accuracy of a marksman's weapon in a package short enough for clearing rooms. The Steyr AUG and FAMAS became icons, symbols of a new era of warfighting. But the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, refused to switch. At the height of the Bullpup craze, they looked at the future and said, no. They stubbornly stuck to the decades-old AR and AK platforms. And today, the tide is turning. Nations that once championed the Bullpup are now abandoning it. Why? What did the Americans and Russians understand that others didn't? The answer lies in a brutal clash between elegant theory and the unforgiving reality of combat. Today, we're going to conduct a deep dive analysis into the great Bullpup experiment and why the future of the assault rifle looks a lot more like the past. To understand the appeal of the Bullpup, we have to go back to the Cold War battlefield. The doctrine of mechanized infantry was king. Soldiers were no longer just marching on foot. They were being carried into battle inside cramped metal boxes like the American M113 or the Soviet BMP. In this environment, the standard infantry rifle, like the American M16, was a liability. It was long, unwieldy, and constantly getting snagged on equipment and doorways. The obvious solution was to shorten the barrel, which is what led to carbines like the M4. But this came at a significant cost. The fundamental law of ballistics is that a longer barrel generally means higher muzzle velocity. Higher velocity means a flatter trajectory, longer effective range, and more energy on target. When you shorten the barrel to create a carbine, you sacrifice that performance. The Bullpup was the elegant, almost magical solution to this paradox. The design's genius is simple. It places the action and magazine well behind the trigger group inside the stock. This simple shift shaves off nearly a foot of dead space from the rear of the rifle. The result? You can have a full-length 20-inch barrel, the same as a full-sized M16, inside a weapon that is actually shorter than an M4 carbine with its stock collapsed. It was, on paper, the perfect weapon. You got the ballistic performance of a rifle with the handling of a submachine gun, the best of both worlds, and so a generation of advanced militaries jumped on board. Austria with the revolutionary Steyr AUG, France with the iconic FAMAS, Britain with the L85, better known as the SA80, and later China with the QBZ-95. The future, it seemed, had arrived. While Europe was embracing this new design, the United States and the Soviet Union, the two nations with arguably the most combat experience, were doubling down on their conventional platforms. The Americans continued to refine the AR-15 platform, culminating in the M4 carbine. The Soviets continued to evolve the Kalashnikov with the AK-74. Their refusal wasn't based on a lack of innovation. Both nations experimented with Bullpup designs in their R&D labs. Their decision to reject them was a conscious one, based on a deep understanding of the human element in combat. While the Bullpup solved the length problem, it created a new and ultimately more severe set of problems related to the human interface. We can break these down into what I call the unholy trinity of Bullpup flaws: ergonomics, the trigger, and the reload. Flaw 1, ergonomics and balance. A conventional rifle, like an M4, has its weight distributed between the shooter's hands. It's balanced, making it feel natural to point and quick to transition between targets. A Bullpup, by necessity, has the vast majority of its weight, the bolt carrier group, the magazine, the action, concentrated at the rear, in the shoulder. This makes the weapon extremely rear-heavy. While this can be stable when firing from a supported position, it can feel awkward and unbalanced during dynamic movement. More critically, it created a massive problem for about 10% of the population, left-handed soldiers. In most early Bullpup designs, the ejection port is right next to the user's cheek. For a right-handed shooter, this isn't a problem. For a left-handed shooter, it means a stream of hot, high-velocity brass is being ejected directly into their face. While some designs, like the Steyr AUG, offered swappable bolts, This was a complex armorer-level task, not something that could be done in the field. This fundamental ergonomic flaw meant the weapon was not truly ambidextrous. Flaw 2. The trigger. This is perhaps the most universally criticized aspect of the Bullpup design. In a conventional rifle, the trigger is located directly beneath the action. The physical connection between the trigger and the sear, the part that releases the hammer, is short and direct. This allows for a crisp, clean, and predictable trigger pull, which is essential for accurate marksmanship. In a Bullpup, the trigger is nearly 2 feet away from the action it needs to control. The only way to connect them is with a long, often flexible, metal rod or linkage bar. The result? A trigger pull that is almost universally described as mushy, spongy, gritty, and long. This vague and heavy trigger makes precision shooting, especially under stress, significantly more difficult. While modern designs have improved this, for decades it was a defining and unavoidable flaw of the platform. Flaw 3. The reload. This is the flaw that is most deadly in a firefight. A soldier's ability to reload their weapon quickly, intuitively, and without taking their eyes off the threat can be the difference between life and death. And this is where the conventional layout has a massive, undeniable advantage. Watch the M4 reload. The magazine release is right under the trigger finger. The magazine drops free. The new magazine is inserted into the magwell located between the hands in the shooter's natural workspace. The bolt release is easily slapped with the support hand. The entire process can be done in 2 to 3 seconds, often without the shooter ever breaking their cheek weld or taking their eyes off the target. It is a masterclass in economy of motion. Now watch the Bullpup reload. The magazine release is located at the far rear of the rifle, requiring a separate, awkward motion. The shooter must bring their support hand all the way back, often under their armpit, to find the magazine well. They have to break their cheek weld and often tilt the rifle, losing their sight picture, and situational awareness. It is a slower, more complex, and less intuitive process. Under the immense stress of combat, those extra seconds and that lost focus are a catastrophic liability. For decades, this was a subject of fierce debate. Bullpup proponents argued that soldiers could simply train through these ergonomic issues. But in the last decade, the debate has been settled, not by gun enthusiasts on the internet, but by the armies that once championed the Bullpup design. The most damning verdict came from France. The FAMAS was a symbol of French national pride. Yet in 2017, the French army began replacing it with the Heckler & Koch 416, a German-made conventional layout rifle based on the AR-15 platform. The creators of one of the most iconic bullpups in history had effectively admitted that the conventional layout was superior for the modern soldier. Next came China. The PLA had gone all in on their domestic QBZ-95 bullpup, issuing it across their entire military. But as their armed forces have modernized and gained more experience, they've made the same calculation as the French. Their new standard-issue rifle is the QBZ-191, a thoroughly modern but completely conventional design. This is a massive logistical undertaking, signaling a complete doctrinal shift away from the Bullpup. Even the British SA80, a rifle with a notoriously troubled development history that required extensive German engineering from H&K to finally make it reliable, stands as a cautionary tale. While it is now a serviceable weapon, its painful journey highlighted just how difficult it is to get the Bullpup formula right. The nations that have stuck with the Bullpup, like Austria with its excellent AUG and Israel with its battle-proven Tavor, have created superb weapons. But they are increasingly the exception, not the rule. So what is the final verdict on the great Bullpup experiment? It was not a failure. It was a brilliant and innovative solution to a very specific problem: how to get the ballistic performance of a long barrel into a short, vehicle-friendly package. However, in solving that engineering problem, it created a new set of human factors problems. The awkward ergonomics, the poor triggers, and the slow reloads were not just minor inconveniences, they were fundamental flaws that impacted a soldier's ability to fight effectively under stress. The superpowers, the US and Russia, by sticking with their conventional platforms, were able to invest decades into perfecting the ergonomics and reliability of a layout that was already fundamentally intuitive. Modern combat, with its emphasis on speed, modularity, and rapid engagements, proved that the intuitive handling of the classic rifle was more important than the packaging efficiency of the Bullpup. The experiment was necessary. It pushed the boundaries of what a rifle could be. But in the end, after a 40-year detour, the world's most powerful armies have concluded that muscle memory beats space-age looks. The throne has been reclaimed.